Today we're going to be talking about what to do when your ex upgrades. Now, let's start off by talking about what I mean when I say upgrades. Ultimately, when your ex upgrades, it means that they've moved on to someone new that you think is better than yourself. Now, this can be an especially hard pill to swallow, especially if you want to get your ex back. You look at the new girl and think, wow, she's incredibly intimidating. What do I do? Well, if you stick around until the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly what you should be doing to give you the best chance to navigate this situation. But first things first, if you haven't already, make sure you stop everything you're doing and take my Ex Recovery Chances quiz. It's a simple 2-minute quiz designed to tell you what kind of chance you have of getting your ex back. If you want to take the quiz, it's pretty simple. Simply look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on it. It will take you directly to a page where all you have to do is just answer the questions, and we'll give you an approximate idea of what your chances are of getting your ex back, so you know you're not wasting your time. Okay. Let's talk about what to do if you found your ex has upgraded with a new version of you. Now, when people come to me and say that their ex has moved on to a better version of them, there's two problems that I noticed. Number one is sort of a tactical what do I do type thing, and number two is I noticed they have a gigantic confidence issue. So what I'd like to do is briefly talk to you about how to rebuild confidence so that you aren't so intimidated by the new girl, and also potentially you can catch your ex's eye. So it's been my belief that there are 3 layers to confidence. Oftentimes you'll hear experts say, well, you just need to be more confident, but they don't really give you any way to achieve that. So that's why I created the 3 different layers. They are as follows. Layer number 1 is called the surface layer. Layer number 2 is the lifestyle layer, and layer number 3 is the internal layer. Now, just like with anything, what we're trying to do is work from the outside in. In other words, what matters more than anything when it comes to confidence is the internal side of confidence. The trick is that internal confidence is the most difficult to obtain. And often the best way to obtain it is by working on the first 2 layers before you get to that 3rd layer. So what are the 3 layers specifically? Layer number 1 is called the surface layer. This is the most superficial layer to confidence. Ultimately, it's just basically about how you look or how others perceive you. Where things really get interesting is the lifestyle layer. The lifestyle layer is all about how you are perceived by others and what your hobbies are and how you spend your time. What is your lifestyle like? And by working on those 2 things, it can have a massive impact on your own internal self-confidence. Now, what is the internal layer of confidence? It's basically knowing that no matter what life throws your way, you're gonna be okay. Fortunately, when we're dealing with breakups, and especially women who want to get their exes back, they don't really view it that way. So, how do you build up that internal layer of confidence? Well, first things first, we talked about sort of the trickle-down effect, where you're working on the lifestyle layer and the surface layer, and that kind of trickling down into the internal layer. But if you want to work on the internal layer directly, you need to face your greatest fears. And oftentimes for you, your greatest fear is seeing your ex with another woman. Well, good for you, that fear has just come true. What you need to do is start visualizing you just coming out the other end and being okay. Going through this rigorous process every single day where you face your fears, you rise up to them, and you overcome them. Even if it's just visualization, it matters and can give you some of that internal confidence that you need. Now, not all we're going to be talking about today is just building up your confidence. I mean, that's kind of cliche. Well, let's talk about the rebound effect. A lot of times people get a bit irrational when their ex moves on to someone new, especially if it's quickly. And the first question I ask people when they're in this circumstance is, hey, do you think your ex is in a rebound relationship? Now, how do you know if your ex is in a rebound relationship? Well, by looking at 2 distinct criteria: how quickly they moved on and how long they've been in that new rebound relationship. If they moved on within a month of your breakup, especially if you had a long relationship, that's a good indicator that your ex is in a rebound relationship. But if they moved on 3 months after your breakup or 4 months after your breakup, it's a little less likely to be a rebound relationship. The second type of criteria is how long they've been in that new relationship. If they've been with that new relationship for more than 6 months, it's beginning to turn more serious and it's beginning to look a little less rebound. The other thing to keep in mind when it comes to rebound relationships is the honeymoon period factor. A lot of people don't realize this, but there's kind of a sliding scale when it comes to comparing you and the new girl. Oftentimes when your ex moves on to a new girl, he's immediately going to compare the feeling he has in that new relationship with the feeling he had at the end of your relationship. The problem is that no one really has a great end of their relationship, and your ex is going to be comparing how he feels at the beginning of that new relationship when things are great. He's in the middle of the honeymoon period. But what's important for you to keep in mind is that eventually the honeymoon period will end, and that's when the real comparisons will begin. That's why we try not to take rebound relationships too seriously until they're in month 6 and above. But let's assume you're in one of those situations where your ex has quote unquote upgraded to someone new and someone you feel is better than you. What do you do if you feel like they've been together for a long time and it's not a rebound relationship? Well, that's where you transition and implement what I like to call the being there method. Now, I tell this story a lot and I'm gonna tell it again. The being there method is something that we accidentally stumbled onto, and we actually later corroborated it with science. So what is the being there method? Well, when we first started ex-boyfriend recovery, we would get people that would come to us with these new girl relationships, basically their ex moving on to another woman or another person. They would come to us and say, "What do I do?" And we would say, "We don't know." That wasn't until we actually had a coaching client and we kind of just decided to take some chances with coaching her. We decided to have her do an extra long period of no contact, and then we just decided, hey, what would happen if you purposely friend zoned yourself to your ex-boyfriend and you were just there to help him emotionally? What would that do? And what we found is it actually tapped into some of the insecurities that the new relationship had with you, being the ex. And you could actually play that, especially if your ex is continuing to talk to you, it could work well in your favor. Later on, I found an article released by Psychology Today that was talking about this exact concept, just in a different light. Here are a few of my favorite quotes from that article. The more frequent the contact with an ex, the less satisfied participants were with their current relationship. Basically, if your ex is contacting you very consistently, it's a great indicator that they're not really as happy as you may think they are in their new relationship. One of my other favorite quotes from that article is, "The research shows that maintaining contact with exes is pretty common, but whether it indicates a problem with your current relationship most likely depends on why you keep in touch." So that last quote basically told us two things. Number one, exes getting in contact when they're in new relationships with their other exes is actually pretty common. So it's not out of the hand for them to ignore you. The second thing is that really what matters more than anything is why they're contacting you. So if you notice that they're contacting you for emotional support, to talk about their relationship or talk about things that are maybe some topics that should be reserved for their relationship, it's a good sign that they're not very satisfied with that relationship. So your goal with the being there method is basically to get them to contact you a lot and get them to contact you and rely on you for emotional support. That's it. And by doing that, not only will it make your ex realize how unhappy and unsatisfied he is in his current relationship, but you can even tap into some of the insecurities that the new upgrade has about him talking to you. Now, this is where we get into the morally gray aspect of this. Yes, this is a morally gray strategy, but it is a strategy that we've found works pretty much better than anything when your ex has moved on to someone new, especially if you feel that someone new is intimidating. Now, is it the most healthy approach to relationships? Absolutely not. But it's not my job to play ethics with you, because ultimately it's your decision. It's my job to show you what works better than anything else. And thus far, we haven't found anything better than the being there method. Now, the last thing to do if you find your ex has upgraded and moved on to someone new is to actually move on to someone new yourself. Recently, I've been conducting lots of interviews with our success stories. Now, these are interviews that I post on the YouTube channel, and I've been kind of doing about 1 or 2 interviews a week. Basically, I sit down for an hour with a success story and ask them all kinds of questions about how they got their exes back. I don't really care about if they followed my program to a T. I cared about what they did that worked. And then ultimately what I'm looking for is patterns. Thus far, I've talked about one pattern I'm noticing, which is this concept of not caring if you get your ex back anymore. But there's also been a second pattern that I'm noticing beginning to emerge, and that's this concept of the fear of loss. If your ex sees you, especially if they're interested in you, with someone new, it kind of helps spur things along. This is actually important because I interviewed one of my most favorite interviews ever last week from a woman who was in a situation where her ex moved on to a new girl. She not only did the being there method to get him back, she also moved on and dated someone else for a little bit. And that was a huge indicator into basically getting them back together. So does this mean that you should move on to someone new completely and find the new love of your life and approach every single date that way? No, it is definitely not. Look at this as an opportunity to do two things. Number one is to distract yourself. One of the most difficult things about trying to get an ex back, especially if they've upgraded and moved on to someone new, is not obsessing so much about that situation. By focusing on your own life, by focusing on dating someone new, you can actually help, even if it's not the best date, but it can help distract you from what's going on with your ex. The second thing is to actually practice on making men basically fall over themselves for you. Look at this as practice on getting your ex back. You don't have to fall in love with the new guy at all, but maybe you will. That's just a plus. So let's recap everything that you should do if you find your ex upgrades. Thing number one you should do is definitely work on your own internal confidence. Thing number two is implement a being there method. And finally, thing number three is don't be afraid to go out and go on dates for yourself. It's a great distraction and a great way to practice all of the things you're learning here on my YouTube channel. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you take that Ex Recovery Chances quiz I was talking about at the beginning of this video. All you have to do if you want to take the quiz is simply look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on it. It's that simple. Now, if you haven't liked, commented, subscribed, and done everything that the YouTube algorithm and YouTubers basically tell you to do for my channel, could you please do that? It would really help a lot. I'll see you next time.